Here's the thing, what I need you to do first, I need you to take your reading, I need you to take your responses, and just go ahead and put those to the side for right now. We're going to come back to that a little bit later on. But what I need you to do next, go ahead and take out your notebooks. We're going to start our last set of notes. Dry your eyes. Title these ones The Cold War. But I do want you to be certain that you take a look at the years that this is involved as well. The Cold War is going to drag on from the very end of World War II, from 1945 up until 1991. Whoa, we're going to have almost 50 years of dealing with this. Now, Kennedy, I get to pick on you because you're the one who wanted to do it. Let's use the atomic bomb. I'm with you here. Let's end it. Let's solve the problem. You know how long the Cold War lasts if we go with President Kennedy over here? 1 day. Annihilate the Russians.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
End it.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, we don't want to do that. We got to do something else.
Why?
Because
So if we want to just not use the atomic bomb, we've got to just deal with them for almost 50 years. Now let's kind of talk about where where we left off with Yalta here, because during Yalta, the US, the Brits, the Russians, they're all allies for one reason: common enemy. Now that common enemy is defeated, so we're not allies anymore. In fact, we're enemies. So how are we going to deal with the Russians? How are we going to go forward now that our alliance breaks down? What we're going to see is the Cold War is how we deal with them. It's how just simply every time they make a move, we have to counter it. We have roughly 50 years of this period of tension and conflict and competition between the United States and our allies and the Soviet Union and their allies. Now, if you don't want to use the atomic bomb to solve the problem right now, what that means is we just have to deal with them. We have to stop them no matter where they go. And some of you actually got a little bit ahead of me today. We have a very small window where we have the atomic bomb all to ourselves. The Russians figure it out faster than we thought they would. So by August of 1949, they have the atomic bomb. So what just happened to our monopoly? Now it's gone. So by 1949, the Cold War escalates, and it escalates fast, because now we're going to have this really weird situation where when both sides have the atomic bomb, they say, look, now if you hit us, we'll hit you back. Your move. This is a weird place for the world to be in that now by 1949 we have two nuclear powers that do not get along. And both sides have said, if you launch, we launch. And we blow up the world together. What a weird little situation this is. So when both sides have the atomic bomb, well, we got to figure out how we're going to somehow keep the world from blowing up. Now, I don't want to bust your bubble because I did the other day. I'm sorry. Did you guys sleep okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. We, just the United States, today have enough nuclear weapons to blow up the world 22 times over.
Let's go.
So we can blow it up, and then if it miraculously comes back together, blow it up again.
How many times as we want.
No, only 22.
But we can always have our test the other nuclear stockpiles.
That's right. There are other countries out there today that have nuclear weapons, including the Russians. So when when World War II is over, there's really only two places to go. You're either with the United States or you're with the Soviet Union. Those are your options. Now let's kind of think back. Again, we got to kind of compare to World War I. When World War I comes to an end, we are the lone superpower on Earth. It's just us. When World War II comes to an end, now there are two. It's us and the Soviet Union. Now the Soviet Union, right after the war, Stalin's still in charge. And Stalin, as you guys know, is routinely untrustworthy. He'll make promises, but he really has no intention of keeping them. He'll tell the West what we want to hear, but in actuality, he already has his plans. Now, I gave you guys your Yalta reading, and I asked you one question at the end there, because Stalin's already decided what he wants to do in Eastern Europe. He's already figured it out. Now, I'll go ahead and ask you guys, because I left that question at least somewhat ambiguous. Is he going to have elections in Eastern Europe?
Yes.
No.
They will, but they won't be
He
fair.
promised he would have elections.
They'll just
Open and free. Vote for whoever you want. I have to think by this point that Roosevelt and Churchill knew that Stalin was lying to them. They must have known. If not, they're completely gullible.
No way they didn't know.
Must have known. So Stalin's gonna really not have these elections. So what do you think he's gonna do?
Make them communists.
He's going to make them communists whether you want to be or not. This is what we're going to see as the fate of everyone who comes in contact with Stalin and the Soviet Union. You're going to be communist whether you like it or not. And if you want to speak up against it, that's not a problem. You can do that one time, and then you'll disappear. This is the fate of Eastern Europe. You're either going to come with the US and be capitalist and democratic, or you're going to go with the Soviets and you're going to be communist, whether you like it or not. Now, I want to just kind of play this out here because I got to go back to World War II and really where we left off. Ever since Stalingrad, the Russian army's been moving to the west. They're on their way to Germany. But if they're going to get to Germany, they got to go through Eastern Europe first. So as the Red Army's marching across Europe, as they enter into Eastern Europe, as they go through Poland, as they go through Romania, as they go through Czechoslovakia, they're just going to take them. They just occupy them. And Stalin tells the people of Poland, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, all throughout Eastern Europe, congratulations! You are now my buffer zone. You are all going to be communists, and you will love it. Because if you don't love it, you'll be eliminated. So welcome to the great new Russian Empire. Now, I kind of get this question sometimes, and I want to play this out too. Well, why don't the Poles fight back? Why don't they stand up to the Russians?
Because they just got decimated.
No way. Not even close. The Red Army is so massive, it can occupy all of Europe. That's the numbers they have. It's not even close. So I will tell you this, I would love it for the Poles to stand up. They're going to try and get massacred. They do it on multiple occasions, actually. The Poles are what's called the double cursed. They're invaded by the Nazis, and then they're invaded by the communists. A friend of mine, he's considerably older than I am, if you could possibly imagine that, but he lived in communist Poland. And I asked him one time, I said, well, what was worse for the Polish people? Being invaded by the Nazis or being invaded by the communists? And he answers in a way that's really simple. He said, look, yeah, we were invaded by the Nazis, but the Nazis only occupied Poland for 4 years. The Russians occupied us for almost 50. So who's worse? They're the same. It's just the communists were there for longer. That's how he explains living in communist Poland. Now, if I have enough time, I'll share some stories with you because what happens in Eastern Europe is shocking and terrifying. Now, what we know about Stalin is he's simply just a liar. He'll just say what you want to hear, And again, I don't know if Churchill and Roosevelt are that naive and gullible, or if they simply didn't believe him anyway. Stalin promised to hold open and free elections in Eastern Europe. He said, now that the Red Army's occupying them, I'm going to give them their sovereignty back. They're going to get to choose whatever government they want. Don't believe it. He's a communist dictator. He doesn't care. What he's going to do in Eastern Europe is whatever he wants to do. And Stalin, being the paranoid schizophrenic, is always kind of thinking about, well, who might be a threat to my power? Who could potentially be a problem? He always thinks that Germany might be a problem. He should. He's been invaded by the Germans. I'm not surprised he's terrified of this. He promises open elections and, of course, just cancels them. Says, no, we're just not going to do elections anymore. I'm going to pick who's in charge of Poland. I'm going to pick who's in charge of Romania. I'm going to pick who's in charge of Czechoslovakia. And as long as they have two characteristics, they'll be just fine. Now, I'll go ahead and ask you guys. Who is Stalin going to pick to be in charge of Eastern Europe? Poland, Czechoslovakia, etc. What are those two characteristics you should probably have if Stalin's going to pick you to run one of these countries?
Can't be a threat to his power.
Not going to be a threat, you're absolutely right. So, you better be a communist. And also,
A dictator.
that always helps, certainly. And you better be just loyal to Stalin. As long as you're a communist and loyal to Stalin, he'll keep you in power. So I just want to use Poland as an example here. Stalin comes in, looks around and says, let's see, who am I going to pick to be the unchallengeable leader of Poland? Who can I trust?
No one.
No one. So I need someone who I think I can trust. They gotta have ambition to a certain extent, but I hear what you're saying, Scott. What happens if this person crosses Stalin in the smallest way?
He died.
I'll just get rid of you and find someone else. I need someone that is fiercely loyal. As long as you're fiercely loyal to me, I don't care what you do in Poland. You're a puppet. You're just installed. You're put there because Stalin wants you there. And Stalin makes all the decisions. And any kind of deviation, any small threat that you might pose to Stalin, he'll just get rid of you. Well, what do you know? That leader of Poland gets poisoned. I don't know what happens. Oh, he's dead? That's unfortunate. Now I gotta find someone else. Someone who is more loyal. He creates what's called his satellite nations. These states in Eastern Europe that are only loyal to him. They have zero independence. They do whatever Stalin says. Now let's kind of back this up a little bit. Stalin said, I promise I'll have elections in all these places, and then goes back on his promise. Well, what are the Americans and the Brits going to do about it?
Nothing.
Could we use the atomic bomb?
Not on your
At this
own.
point,
Yeah.
It's always on the table. But if you don't want to use it, well, what do? Are you going to invade Eastern Europe? You can if you want. Start World War III. So the Western powers just let it happen. And basically with an apology to Eastern Europe. Sorry, but you're going to be communists for probably the rest of your lives. Unless you can get out, that'd be great. But that's all we can do. Stalin takes Eastern Europe without a fight from the Western powers. So here's where we stand as the war is over. We got to figure out how we're going to deal with them. President Truman has the option of the atomic bomb on the table. End the problem now. And Truman does what some of you did. He says, I'm not going to start World War III. I'm not just going to use atomic energy to destroy the Soviet Union. So what do? Truman's actually pretty fortunate though.